start today on Capitol Hill, where the fate of Donald Trump's cabinet hangs in the balance. Today, Vice President-elect J.D. Vance is holding meetings with key senators and Trump's picks for Secretary of State and Attorney General. On the Secretary of State front, Marco Rubio is expected to sail through the confirmation process. But Matt Gaetz is a very different story, especially since less than an hour from now, the House Ethics Committee will discuss whether senators should see their investigation into Gaetz before they vote. CNN's Manu Raju is on Capitol Hill, of course, talking to lawmakers. Where do things stand so far with these meetings that Gaetz is having, Manu?
Yeah, this is very much an effort by the vice president-elect and Matt Gaetz to try to lock down Republican support. The Democrats are not part of this meeting because Republican support is soft right now. In fact, getting to the 51 votes he would need to be confirmed by the United States Senate next year seems at the moment a steep climb because a number of Republican senators are concerned with this pick, are concerned about these allegations that are detailed in this House Ethics report. A key question today is what that House Ethics Committee decides to do with this report. They plan to meet in about an hour to discuss its fate. Now, this all comes as there are questions about what would happen to Matt Gaetz if he does not get the votes to become the Attorney General. Donald Trump has floated the idea of installing Gaetz via a recess appointment, essentially short-circuiting the Senate process altogether. There is growing Senate Republican opposition to this idea. One key senator, Thom Tillis, who sits on the Senate Judiciary Committee, said he's okay if Donald Trump were to go this route for lower-level nominees, as Barack Obama did for about 33 nominees during his term in office. But he said not for cabinet nominees like Matt Gaetz.
Not for a cabinet level position. That should be absolutely off the table. And quite honestly, any serious candidate for a cabinet level position, I would have to really wonder if they would want it or be willing to accept it under a recess appointment. These positions are too important and carry too much weight internationally to take a shortcut. However, I really do hope we get at least 33 recess appointments. What do you not know about that report already? Y'all been reporting it.
Yeah, but there's, it's 45, 50 pages long. There's a lot of details in there.
And do you honestly think that the people who testified willingly are not going to share that information?
And that last comment referring to, of course, the report, the House Ethics Committee report. Tillis is under the impression that even if the House Ethics Committee today decides not to release this to the public, that eventually senators will get their hands on it, or at least some of it will leak to the press, and that'll be enough for them to make a critical decision. But there are others on the Senate Judiciary Committee, including Republicans, like the incoming chairman, Chuck Grassley, who says that report could help speed up the confirmation process. If it is not released, then the Senate Judiciary Committee would have to do its own investigation, potentially slowing down the Gaetz nomination altogether, which raises the stakes for this critical vote in about an hour. If they decide to vote, Dana, it would require one Republican to break ranks, join with the 5 Democrats to release the report. We'll see if they get to that point, because up in the last couple of days, Republicans were saying it is not done yet, this report, so they could decide to punt on this matter until later this year.
All right, Manu, thank you. Raise your hand if you see any evidence of either J.D. Vance or Matt Gaetz or any of the senators going in and out there. Let's bring in my excellent panel of CNN reporters and colleagues, Eva McKend, Phil Mattingly, and David Chalian, who is not only our political director, but this is the first time he is on Inside Politics as CNN's new D.C. bureau chief.
Thanks.
Just going to keep adding titles to your very, very impressive resume.
Thanks.
We're all very happy for you.
Appreciate it.
So when is my, no, I'm kidding. Let's talk about some of what we just heard from Manu about these meetings going on right now. Phil Mattingly, it wasn't that long ago that you were chasing senators and chasing people in such meetings. I know that you've been working the phones. What is your sense of where things stand right now? We can start on the 2 nominees that J.D. Vance is bringing around, but also some phone calls that I know you're making.
So for folks that have already been picked, and talking about the folks that were on the Hill today, the meetings are important. I think they're a first step for Vance to kind of be playing his role in the chamber. Tell me who's in those meetings, and I'll tell you how important they actually are. And the people that have been in those meetings up to this point, thinking specifically Marsha Blackburn, Josh Hawley, these are not individuals inside that Republican conference that I think the Trump team is very concerned about at this point. That doesn't say anything. He's going to meet with lots of people. It's the folks like Tom Tillis, who I think is saying out loud a thing that I'm hearing from lots of senators behind the scenes related to the former president-elect's talking about recess appointments. That is a very real concern with a majority, I think, of the members in the Senate Republican Conference. But also, when you have a Susan Collins sitting down in meetings with Matt Gaetz, when you have members that you wouldn't describe them necessarily as moderate politically, but moderate within that conference, then we're going to start to see whether or not the meetings have an effect. I think you're going to hear a lot in terms of the actual people that have been named about senators want to go through the process. They want to go through the process. And that's always the case. You know that from running around, usually edging me out of galleries on Capitol Hill. But it's also important for Trump's kind of perspective on things. If it's going to go down, it has to go down through a full process. Now, there's also the behind the scenes of picks that are still forthcoming. The biggest one, we've seen the battle spill out in the public over the course of the last week or two, and that's been for the Treasury Secretary nomination. We knew Scott Bessent was up for it. We knew Howard Lutnick was fighting for it. He's now been given commerce and some of the trade portfolio. Bessent is still in the running. Interestingly, in Texas yesterday, when the president went down with Elon Musk to watch the rocket theatrics, which was actually pretty cool. There was somebody in the background of those pictures, Bill Hagerty, the senator from Tennessee, who was interviewing yesterday, I'm told, for the Treasury position, flew with President Trump on the plane. Those meetings went well, I'm told, but today, President Trump will be meeting at Mar-a-Lago with two other candidates, Kevin Warsh, former Fed governor, also Mark Rowan, who's the CEO and co-founder of Apollo, major fund management group. They need that decision quickly. They wanted that decision last week. How that decision goes will determine how the NEC position goes, how the DPC position goes. So the expectation is today may be the day, but we've seen the fights play out.
We've been on those days where today may be the day. And then let's go. I think Phil expertly, of course, captured sort of where we are in these things. I do think on the stuff going on in the Hill, it's important also to note, so true, who is Gaetz meeting with? That's the inside game. But there's also the outside game where public pressure and campaign pressure is going to start being applied. I mean, Charlie Kirk has made it clear. The Turning Point USA, big component of the Trump victory and what he and his organization were helped put together in terms of turnout, young voter engagement, all of that on the conservative side. Threatening primaries to any Republican senator who voted to confirm in Biden's cabinet Merrick Garland as Attorney General, but now potentially is one of these on the list to watch who may vote against Matt Gaetz. And he's saying, if you do that, you will be primaried. And there's going to be this conservative pressure on the outside to try and help Trump, even as Gaetz may be faltering in the inside game, which of course is the one that will determine whether or not finishes the line.
I agree with David. The pressure campaign will be very real, but these Republican senators will also have to weigh their own legacies and what they personally want to be associated with. I think a good space to watch, besides the usual suspects of Murkowski and Collins, are Republican senators who do not fear their reelection, who were recently reelected and are not particularly troubled about a potential primary from the conservative activist wing of the party.
So you mentioned recess appointments and the fact that there are a lot of Republican senators who are not into that. Let's just hear from some of them, some pretty senior Republicans who are questioning it.
I think a recess appointment is going to be very challenging.
Not even in the cards. I mean, again, I know it makes for great fodder, maybe a couple of more clicks or whatever, but I don't even believe that Mr. Gaetz would want to come in under those circumstances.
I don't think we should be circumventing the Senate's responsibilities.
The same Republicans that you mentioned that might have a problem voting for somebody under regular order probably also have a problem voting to put the Senate into recess.
And so, just for people who aren't totally up on what we mean by recess appointment, and by this time, I'm guessing if you're watching the show, you get it. But
take out your pocket constitution.
Yeah, if they can't, if Donald Trump can't actually get a nominee through the United States Senate, the idea would be the Senate, when they go into recess, he does it without Senate consent. But in order for that to happen, John Thune, the Senate Republican leader, would have to agree to go into recess.
Well, and so would
Knowing
49 of his colleagues at a minimum.
Right.
And I think this is the difficult thing. What Trump has said, and he did this before he started making a lot of these picks was, I want recess appointments. You will do recess appointments. There's a reason recess appointments haven't happened in the first Trump administration or the Biden administration. During the Obama administration, the last time, I think Manu mentioned there were 33 of them, there was a Supreme Court decision that made clear that trying to circumvent Senate procedure where they go into session just for a couple of days, then have a pro forma. Now we're really going down the rabbit hole. I apologize. Which was done to stop recess appointments, which happened by the hundreds in previous administrations, had to be at least 10 days to, quote, count as a recess. So basically, for a Senate that doesn't ever do that and has had bipartisan agreement on these pro forma sessions, Thune would have to pass a resolution going into a recess for at least 10 days. He would need a majority of the U.S. Senate to vote with him on that. If you have people like Thom Tillis and Mike Rounds and John Cornyn all saying, you know, I'm a senator, I like to have some prerogative. It's literally in the Constitution that I get to advise and consent on these nominees. Senators like their power. They like their authority. Their willingness to give it up limited.